Earnest money is money that, if you're representing the buyer will pay to the seller to take their house off the market while the buyer goes through their due diligence period, also known as like the inspection period, making sure they can get financing, appraisal, those sort of things. So it's money that the buyer pays up front to the seller. Everything goes through, then the buyer gets that money back on the settlement statement as a credit from the seller. So that's the basic idea of earnest money. In Indiana, our contracts are written extremely in favor of the buyer, so there are a lot of ways for the buyer to get out of the contract and keep their earnest money, unfortunately. Typically, our area earnest money is roughly 1% of the purchase price. It can be more or less depending on the buyer situation. Obviously, the more it shows the buyer's earnest or specific intent to buy the property. So let's say a buyer is buying a property for $300,000 and they want to put down $25,000 in earnest money, which would be a lot. That means they're pretty serious about buying the home if they're going to risk that much money to be negotiated about. Whereas the flip side of that, if somebody's buying a $300,000 house and they have $500 that they put in earnest money, very little, then they don't have near as much as risk. It's easier for them to say, I'm out, keep my $500 and move on. The one thing that people typically forget about earnest money is it's the transaction, unless you write it this way, the transaction is not just, oh, I want to get out of the house, or oh, my buyer wants out, my seller wants out, give them the earnest money and move on. The seller can still sue the buyer based on specific performance. So what that would mean is in the event that let's say the buyer agrees to a house for $300,000 to buy with the seller and gives them $3,000 in earnest money, and then let's say the buyer just absolutely gets cold feet and walks away. And now the market has shifted during that time. So now the seller can only get $275,000 for the house because the buyer decided to walk away. The seller technically has the ability to contact an attorney and sue the buyer for that $25,000 difference in price that they were able to achieve. Now, I've never had anyone actually do that, but that's the way it's written. They can actually do that. So it's not just about the earnest money that they're risking.